We're here for another episode of EV Obsession. I'm Zach Shahan, CEO of Clean Technica, and joining me today, as always, is co-CEO Jo Borras.
We got to celebrate my new promotion. This is a big step up from VP of Associated Catering and Cleaning the Bathroom.
Promoted live on air.
Live on the air. Thank you so much. I couldn't have done this without the little people whose backs I trampled along my way up the corporate ladder.
Oh, no, we have a 5-minute acceptance speak. Look at the speech.
We're good. We're good. Just play the music off. This is one of those days, just like so many other days, where we start off this show looking at the news, trying to come up with things from the weekend that we need to talk about, and just going, man, I don't know if we have enough for a whole show today. And then within about 10 minutes of talking about it and laying out the outline, we realize we've got about 5 hours of content here. We need to cut it all back to fit underneath the standard 1 hour format.
Yeah, it's crazy. I really thought there wasn't much published this weekend, and then we have way too much. We're going to actually have to cut this time for real, like just stop at some point. But yeah, let's jump into it. The first story is a hot one that Joe wrote, published on the weekend. When he first sent it to me, you're like, oh, I don't know if you want to publish this or if I should change something, if it's too harsh. And I was like, oh man, what is in here? It's going to be scary. And I got into it and I was like, oh no, this is just a really good, unique op-ed on Jim Farley's decision to get Ford to join the North American charging standard, Tesla supercharging standard, basically. And it's a really interesting take with a lot of ramifications. And as you noted, there's already over 100 comments on the article. This is quite a hot topic of discussion. So just tell us what's going on here, what's the deal, what's the story, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, this was a tough one, right? Because this is a story that's kind of been 6 months in the making. Back in March, April, Ford announced that they were going to be joining Tesla's North American charging standard in 2025. And in the moment, I think a lot of people were fairly excited about it. We kind of said like, hey, these guys recognize that Tesla has an advantage here. This is going to be really interesting. And then a couple of months later, a number of other automakers also jumped ship from CCS, saying that they were going to make the switch over to NACS.
I think it was just days and weeks following. It was just one.
Oh, sure. But months later, it's like pretty much everybody except for the VW group and a couple of European focused holdouts. But the thing,
if Herbert Diess was still CEO of Volkswagen Group, he would have said, oh no, we joined yesterday when Jim Farley made the announcement, because he was the number one fanboy.
He was the number one fanboy of Elon for sure. And tells you a lot right there. But yeah, so the real issue here is that it wasn't really clear when Ford was going to join NACS. They did announce that it would be 2025, but it was a little bit murky. Like, is this the case where the Ford Lightning and the Mustang Mach-E will suddenly appear in 2025 with Tesla ports as standard equipment? Does this mean that all new electric vehicles from Ford will be NACS compatible from day one, and then the Lightning and the Mustang in their next design iterations will come out that way? It wasn't entirely clear, but then one thing that kind of struck me was that immediately after this announcement, all of the conversation around Ford's products started to focus around the Tesla charging standard and this 2025 model year bogey. But if you're a Ford dealer, you don't have 2025 models to sell. You have 2023 models to sell. Meanwhile, you've got the CEO of Ford going on Twitter, going on X, talking about how terrible the charging experience is with his current products that his dealers are trying to sell. And, now you've got these vehicles that are at one point were hot commodities that are now 6 months later sitting on dealer lots. They're not going anywhere. Dealers have to discount them instead of being able to mark them up like they had been able to. And the question is, did Jim Farley completely torpedo his dealers' ability to sell these EVs by coming out and saying, hey, the ones in 2025 are going to be so much better, you might as well wait? And then that kind of led me into thinking about the Osborne 2, which was they teach it in all the MBA business courses now, that you don't want to reveal too much about your future products because you're going to make people who like your current products, you're going to get them to wait to purchase instead of buying now. And again, Ford doesn't care if you buy now or not because they're selling to their dealers, but the dealers care. And I think the dealers need to be asking Ford some really, really tough questions about just what in the heck their CEO is doing, undermining their own products in public like this.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. I mean, a few things come to mind. One is like how much preparation was there for this announcement? Like how much was it an on the fly announcement that they put in place like very quickly and then announced and sort of didn't think through, oh, we shouldn't really announce this soon. The other thing is like once they'd made the decision and talked with Tesla, how much faith did they have that Elon would be quiet about it? Or start saying, oh, we have automakers. I'm not going to say who, because then it's like, oh, the cat's out of the bag if you say automakers have agreed to join it. So maybe they were stuck in a spot there with that, they thought. Or I mean, when I just look at the picture you created with this comic book bubble caption, I mean, I
It's a
just
real picture of Jim Farley, and then I got someone else's eyes to like give him that oh no look.
did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you see, that's what when I'm looking at this picture, I'm like, no, they just did it shoot from the hip kind of Twitter style and it messed it all up. So I don't know, but so I'm just talking process stuff. I mean, I think you talked about the other stuff, but the thing then that followed was other automakers felt like they had to follow. And for sure, it wasn't an across the industry plan to change all to make these announcements all the same basically so quickly. And what we've got is effectively even bigger Osborning, because like, oh, everybody's going to have an EV that can supercharge next year with an adapter, or the year after without an adapter. And it really, I mean, I hadn't thought much about it, but it must really slow sales this year, because I mean, I'm waiting. I would wait. Anyone I talk to, I would recommend they wait. And even the case of Tesla, I mean, Tesla's sales could be depressed because people are like, oh, I can finally buy something other than a Tesla and have supercharging. And that's a big factor in a lot of Tesla sales. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I
I'm really,
think,
I
yeah,
think
I
you're
think,
onto something here, Joe.
oh, I'm
And
definitely onto
we
something.
should just confirm that no dealers can sell 2025 models. Maybe we'll have to get some fact checking. Joe,
No, you can't sell. They don't
you
have
can't.
them.
Delayed response does not make that joke work.
No,
I almost
they can't make it
interrupted
work.
you. No, that's just bad joke.
There's no way that a dealer can sell the
It was a
25 year
it was a
cars.
it was a joke. It would have worked live
It would have worked
if I had
live.
interrupted you
Sorry.
again. So who's this? Is your grandfather?
This
No.
is Adam Osborne. This is the guy that if he had not announced the Osborne 2 before its time, you never would have heard of Steve Jobs or Bill Gates. This was the first portable computer that really hit the market. Mechanical keyboard, great little machine. It had native word processing and spreadsheet stuff, which is all you really had back then to run a business. And yeah, this guy is famous for having completely torpedoed his own company. They were in the process of ramping up production for the Osborne 2 and didn't make it happen. I think, this is important to note here because I think Ford, much more than other automakers, had kind of put itself out there. They were the first to market with a really credible Model Y competitor with the Mustang Mach-E. They came out swinging with the Ford Lightning. They announced it after the Cybertruck. They rushed it to production. They had the president of the United States drive the thing around. They were really pounding their chests about this thing in a way that other car makers weren't. And I think, yes, Kia has the EV6, Hyundai has the Ioniq, BMW has come out with their i4s and their iXs and things like that. However, they did not have the president of the company out there waving the flag. They did not make huge announcements and massive commitments to challenge Tesla and this, that, and the other. And when they made all those claims, and when Ford and Jim Farley got out there beating their chest and proclaiming this Americana thing with the Lightning, to undermine that and to undermine the kind of confidence that it takes to come out and say, we are going to be the number one EV manufacturer, not Tesla. And to do that in such a public way is really brutal. And there's a couple of things that I want to point out that are really critical that are associated with this. And I know you went forward a little bit to the Bronco,
No,
but
I was just trying to open the text more, but I didn't want to go have it open in a new window, so get messed up.
yeah, no worries. But I think that
Are
these
we
things
moving
are
to the
all related.
Bronco?
Yeah, let's move to the Bronco because I
Okay.
want to make this point. So this is a Chinese made Ford Bronco set to launch in 2024. Now, critically, this is not a copy of the Bronco. This is a company in China that is manufacturing Ford Broncos for Ford. It's a joint venture product uh, in China to manufacture Ford Broncos for the Chinese market. But this is kind of a critical thing because all of a sudden now you've got Ford saying that they don't want to pay the UAW. They're doing it now. They made a tentative deal. But, Ford is out there saying we can't stay competitive. We can't meet our product demands. We're, scaling back our investments in North America. And at the same time, they're manufacturing a vehicle. This is not a little tiny rinky dink Chinese market, traditional Asian market vehicle. This is Ford's hottest product right now, and they're manufacturing it in China. And if Ford can keep its quality control high, they can keep their warranty exposure low. I think it's not a crazy thing to say that we're going to start seeing massive amounts of this vehicle manufactured in China, shipped to the US, and then quote unquote assembled by American workers. And we're going to start to see that come into play and see Ford kind of ratchet up its profit margins. And if it works for the Bronco, which is something that is like, as American as apple pie, you can expect that it's going to work for the Mustang, and eventually it's going to work for big chunks of F Series and Maverick production. And again, I think this is all related. Ford is hitting the brakes on their North American investment. I think a lot of that is because of what the UAW deal has started to look like and that kind of exposure. Ford is recognizing that the rest of the world exists and that these larger markets exist that it needs to learn how to play in. And I just think this is all kind of an example of Ford maybe not expecting, maybe causing some tough times ahead, or predicting some tough times ahead for the U.S. auto market. But yeah, I think this is related to all of this, all of the Osborne effect stuff, all of Ford's hesitation in continuing to build battery plants, Ford's renewed investment in China. I think this is, I think all this is connected.
Well, there's one thing that pops in mind on that previous story that relates even more so now is, I remember we did a bracket battle, Tesla Model Y versus Ford Mustang Mach-E, and the Mustang Mach-E, to my surprise, inched out the Model Y.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a statistically significant scientific study. That was not a random sample. It's, but it's people who follow EVs closely. Maybe Ford got word of it and got a lot of votes in through their own networks. I don't know, or it's just the case that a lot of EV followers, people following the market closely, feel like the Mach-E is on par with the Tesla or slightly better. Now, the Tesla Model Y sells like 10 plus times more. It's got far more sales, and it's easy to make the case that it's more competitive. That's what I did. I think I made that case on the bracket battle. But it makes me think, like, if Ford worked a little bit harder to bring down the costs, build up the hype, push it out in so many markets that it was like, like all the markets where Tesla is selling the Model Y. If it was selling it in all those markets, not just like the US and soon, I think, Australia, and it was really trying to build hype around it, how many Mustang Mach-E's could Ford sell? So, if it does, like you said, follow this path of, producing them in China, like, where does that lead? I mean, it could the Mustang Mach-E be a much bigger seller than it is right now? And I'll leave
Yeah.
you with that question, and with ones that you already basically prepped because you sent me a chart of Ford F-Series sales. So I think you want to talk about that as well with regard to this.
I do. So again, we've got a conversation happening about what Ford is doing with its EVs and the broader market, if you start talking about, whenever you go on LinkedIn or, any of the auto dealer sites right now, what you hear the loudest people talking about, the topic that the loudest people are talking about is that EVs are now sitting on dealer lots. And they are sitting there for more days than their internal combustion counterparts. Now, you can argue that. You can say that an EQS is not as desirable as an S65 AMG. You could say that, a Ford Lightning XLT at $120,000 is obviously going to sit longer than a $47,000 work truck. You can make comments like that and you can kind of make those claims, but I think the bigger thing, the larger trend that is not getting as much play is that all auto sales are slowing down. The days of inventory of just about every make and model out there are creeping up, 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 up. The only exceptions that you're really seeing are vehicles like the Jeep Compass, which are no longer in production. So obviously, every time you sell one, you lower the days of inventory because they're not getting any new ones. But if you scroll up a little bit and look at the annual sales of F-Series trucks, yikes, way too high, way too high. Just look from 2019. In 2019, the annual sale, keep going a little lower, baby. There you go. Annual sales, go to 2019. We had in 2018, 909,000 F-Series pickups were sold in North America in 2018. But if you look at 2023, in 5 years, we've lost a complete third of those sales. Now that's 300,000 of Ford's most profitable product just not sold in 2023 like they were in 2018. So,
well,
that's a shocking number.
I was gonna say, like, we had the COVID era where people couldn't buy cars. And then there was the big bounce back where a lot of people bought cars because stimulus money and the economy opening back up. So I was going to bring that in. But if you look at this chart,
you don't see the bounce back.
There's no bounce back. There's just drop. So it's interesting because I thought in general across the board, there was this bounce back period. So the F series is really struggling. And
all full-size trucks are struggling. Ram trucks.
But this is because of the Tesla Cybertruck coming.
There's no way that this is because of the Tesla Cybertruck coming. There is zero chance that the Tesla Cybertruck has influenced this market at all. In fact, I would argue that the only reason 2023 has not been significantly worse than it has been is because of the hype and the buzz created by the Lightning.
Well, I was just trolling, but we can't measure how much the Cybertruck has impacted this market, but I don't think it's like very significant. I think obviously there's people who are waiting for it who would buy a Ford F-150 or whatever, but I don't think it's a huge portion of the future Cybertruck buyers. And I do think this is just a general issue. So I was going to say, so when there's all the hype about, oh, EVs are sitting on lots longer, so are other cars, is my understanding. So are other vehicles.
Exactly.
It's like A and B are sitting on lots longer, but we're only going to talk about B.
Correct.
And we're not going to highlight that A are also sitting on lots longer. So, I mean,
well, but here's the thing. If you are Ford, if you are GM, and I want you to put your conspiracy hats on, right?
Like if I'm Henry Ford or Henry Ford the
fifth. You're Jim Farley.
Okay.
Your most profitable vehicle is an internal combustion F-Series pickup. Your second most profitable vehicle is probably a full-size F-Series based SUV, something like a Lincoln Navigator or a Ford Expedition. But for the most part, your per unit profit is going to be highest on these pickup trucks and these SUVs, right? Your narrowest margin is going to be on an EV because you're still trying to amortize your R&D costs. Costs you $100,000 to develop a new product. You sell 100 of them at $1,000 and now you've finally broken even, right? This is how business works. Of course you lose 30 grand on the first couple thousand or tens of thousands that you sell. That's what Tesla did. That's what happens with all new technology. Everybody writing those papers is completely clueless when it comes to the most basic aspects of business. However,
Any new
comma,
model, like it doesn't matter
any new model, it
electric.
doesn't
If it's a
matter.
new model, it takes a certain number of sales before you've made your money back. And until then,
Exactly.
any headline writer who's either idiotic or likes to mislead people can say, "Oh, this vehicle, like the Ford Maverick, loses $20,000
Right.
per unit." It doesn't make any sense in real
No,
in
if
the
you
real
have
world, but
any
it's
clue of what of how the world works, you realize that those people are idiots.
or just deceitful.
I don't know. I always like
Sometimes
the
you think
I
they're
always
you
like
think it's
this
more likely
idea.
they don't understand it than that they're
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're English majors. They don't know what they're talking about.
all right.
Most
Well, so
journalists,
let's
no, no,
wrap
no,
up this
no, no,
for
no. Let's say this here. Most journalists and communications majors are not business majors. They're not engineers. They don't have civil engineering degrees and city planning degrees like you do. They don't have finance degrees and backgrounds in business like I do. They just don't. So when
they might have city planning degrees. let's
no,
let's let's
maybe
just
at the
be honest.
Starbucks.
There are people who didn't go into to college thinking, how can I make the most money?
Sure,
they have other
sure.
interests.
No, but the fact remains that when someone sends them an article and says, "Hey," and they see something that says, per unit margins on a Ford F-150 Lightning is negative $32,000, they don't understand what they're reading, and they write a well-meaning article, and they're
Yeah,
like, "Well, somebody needs to ask these questions. I'm a journalist."
yeah.
And
Well,
they don't understand the very basic
let's
tenets of business.
let's wrap up the Ford China discussion. Is there any more big takeaway from with regard to the F series and the China and the Bronco being produced
Oh
there that
yeah.
you wanted
So this
to
is my
conclude with?
my conspiracy theory is Ford and Ford especially, but there's a couple of others that are trying to undermine confidence in EVs deliberately because they understand that tough economic times are coming. People are going to be buying fewer vehicles and they want to milk their most profitable vehicles as long as possible. They're gearing us up for the next bailout. They're going to say the reason we don't have enough cash and the reason we can't pay people, the reason we have to shut down these plants is because you guys forced us to develop EVs. And well, that wasn't profitable. So now we're in trouble. Gimme corporate bailout money. And then they're going to move all the jobs to China anyway. You heard it here first, kids.
All right. Well, let's move on to China then. Good segue.
Yes,
Not even
segue.
planned. Not even planned. Well, sort of planned. I mean, we did put them in order, but I think by now both of us forgot what was next.
I don't even know where I am, buddy.
No.
I was in the Pizza Hut. They said we couldn't use the Pizza Hut anymore. Now I'm in EV obsession land. Look at
Well,
that.
we have our monthly China EV sales report. We'll roll through it quickly since we've done these in the past. We'll sort of be more efficient with these now that you've seen our long discussions about them.
Jose Pontes.
I think the one of the highlights here, 25% of vehicle sales in China are now full electrics. 37% are plug-in vehicles. So 12% more are plug-in hybrids. 25% full electrics. And that's up slightly. The year to date is 1 percentage point lower for both of those. The craziest thing of all for me, over 60% of global plug-in vehicle registrations are in China. China accounts for 60% of the plug-in vehicle market. And in the market, BYD is king for plug-in vehicles. Tesla Model Y is king for full electrics. And BYD's dominated. I mean, you got two models, first two, and then you got the Model Y, and then you've got the full electric BYD Seagull, full electric BYD Yuan Plus, Skipjack, full electric BYD Dolphin. I mean, it's got the winning approach. I mean, it's winning China, and China is more than half of the global market. So, and then you've got these giant Cadillac-like Li Zhang plug-in hybrids, extended range electric vehicles. 3 full-size, like 3 Cadillac Escalade size or similar different models. And then you got the Guang Mini right above them. Like you go from tiny to huge. The market has everything: plug-in hybrids, full electrics, every size. It's a whole different game there in China, and yeah, we're not even like no one. I mean, well, share of vehicles that are plugins is similar in Europe. So it's basically Europe and China are far ahead in that regard. But as far as total volume, I mean, nobody comes close to China.
Yeah, because they don't have half their political system run by evangelicals.
That's true.
Where's the Aura Funky Cat? That's our favorite car.
Where is the Aura Funky Cat?
It's not even on the list. You guys don't even know a good car. You guys can
get,
finally, yeah, you guys can buy a good car, but you don't do it.
That's why they're exporting.
That's why they're exporting it.
It
Like,
is
man,
sometimes on the list. So
yeah, we
I
need to
think
get these things to people who know a good car when they see one.
I think these giant Li Auto vehicles, the Geely Galaxy, Geely Panda Mini, are sort of knocking off the Aura. Yeah, I don't know. That's
Lame.
funny. Any comments on the Chinese market before we move to the next?
They are so far ahead of us, dude. It's like I was having this conversation with one of my aunts. So I have an aunt who's very well off, very financially comfortable. She travels a lot, but mostly in the US and Europe, and she didn't really understand. And she was we were having a conversation. I said to her last year, I was like, you have no idea how far ahead of like America in terms of tech that like Korea and China and Singapore are. She was baffled. She was just like, oh, now I don't even have to swipe my credit card. I just give it the tap and it's like, oh, it knows. And so I said, this is like 15-year-old technology. They had that in Japan
China,
when this is like
they read your
15-year-old tech.
eyeballs.
Exactly. They do biometrics. That's exactly right. And so she went to Asia this past summer, and I hadn't seen her since, and I saw her a few weeks ago, and she was completely blown away. Apparently, she saw one of those EVTOL things, the air taxis.
Wow.
And I don't think there was anybody in it, because again, that's not like a full commercial operation over there. But it was enough that she saw it. And she was like, "They have flying cars over there."
Flying cars.
And I'm like, yep,
we still have the Jetsons. Oh my. Yes, China's ahead. Europe, it's a similar story in Europe compared to the US, but it's not quite as big. So 25% of vehicles were plugins, vehicle sales were plugins, 17% full electrics. So it's down from down a bit from China, but it's still it's like right on its tail. It's a significant step up. That's higher in September than for the year to date. So again, it's growing as it tends to do. If you look just at models, this is ridiculous. Like, this is September. The Tesla Model Y is so far ahead of everything else. And I prefer to go to the year to date chart. So the Model 3 is second, but it's the Model Y is still so far ahead. ID4 is third. The one thing, I mean, that I think is worth keeping in mind again is that like Volkswagen Group has a bunch of models. Stellantis has a bunch of models. They have a different approach. Tesla has 2 models. If Tesla had 12 models, the Model Y would not be like looking like that on the bar chart. If Volkswagen had 2 models, they probably wouldn't do any better.
No, they probably wouldn't. I think this is worth bringing up here that, even though Tesla is out, let's just be clear, Tesla's outselling everybody. They are getting to be a smaller piece of a bigger pie.
Is that
That's it.
Full statement?
That's a complete sentence. Yes. The
Yeah,
overall EV market is growing, and Tesla's share of that market is declining. And I don't know how they're going to get it back. I saw recently that Tesla was announcing that they were still going to build their $25,000 model. Number one, I don't see it. And number two, I don't think it's going to help.
Yeah, it's supposed to happen in Germany. And we'll talk about that more tomorrow. But the thing that interests me with that is, Europe, as we've talked about in recent episodes, sells a lot more small cars. Like, the small cars are popular in Europe. So a small Tesla for 25,000 could be a big seller in Europe. In the US, it would probably struggle, or I don't know. I mean, we don't really know. It's a whole new thing. But this is plug-in vehicle sales. This is not full electrics, and Tesla is far in the lead in September across brands. Volkswagen 8 point, about 2/3 of Teslas. If you look at auto group, this is where those two companies, Volkswagen Group and Stellantis, come out on top. So when you're looking at full auto group and
Yeah.
plug-in vehicles of all kinds, not just full electrics. And then you see, I mean, BMW and Mercedes always surprise me a bit, just because they're not mass market. I mean, they're luxury brands, but they're up there for they're electrifying
But that's who's
faster
buying new cars. That's who can afford new
yeah,
cars, is
yeah.
luxury people.
And that's who's, I mean, they're electrifying quicker at the higher end of the market across the board. But yeah, Volkswagen Group looking pretty good there on that chart. Whooping Stellantis' butt. Make Joe happy. Joe freaks out when Stellantis is on top. He's like, what is going
It's
on?
not
What happened
right.
to the world?
What's going on? How did these guys do something right? Yeah, no, it's baffling.
And if we want to give the US some credit, we have to just cut most of it off and let it drop into the ocean and let California stand alone, because California is the only part of the US that can compete. Well, I guess there's a couple other small states. Like, we can just call them extensions of California. So California suburbs. So California is at 20% electric vehicle market share now, as of the last quarter. Tesla Model Y, just like in Europe, just leads the charts. But you can see BEV share climbed in the past 2 years from about 12%, 13%, we'll say, to about 23%. So climb, 13 to 23%. And if you look at just, you look at the spike here from 2021 to 2023, which is a big spike in that graph.
Yeah.
So
this is interesting because California, it's statewide.
Yeah.
And California, outside of the coast, California is like as conservative as it gets. I mean, that's the state that elected Reagan. But if you look
Schwarzenegger,
that's true. If you look at city by city, I just looked up Chicago. We're a little bit over 10% of new vehicles registered last month were electric. That's
shameful, Joe.
Yeah, but I think that's good, though. I think for a lot of major cities, I think New York, I think Miami, you'll see a much higher percentage of EVs compared to flyover Wyoming or North Dakota or something. And I think that tracks.
I've seen a chart out there that makes this more clear. But if you look at the top selling plug-in vehicles, I mean, the Model Y and the Model 3 absolutely dominate. Like, the rest are like footnotes. And the thing that one of the first things that jumps to mind for me is Tesla relies on a lot of sales a lot of new sales in California to maintain its growth or even maintain its current level. So, one, pissing off Californians is not a good idea, which has been sort of the MO the MO of someone at the company. And two is like there's extreme saturation. If you go to California now, you see Teslas everywhere all the time.
Chicago's the same way.
I mean, it's even like that here in Florida, Southwest Florida. It's like, so, but if you go to California, it's the most extreme. And it's like, how many more people are interested in buying the car that is everywhere? I don't know, it makes me nervous as a Tesla shareholder. It makes me nervous. Like, I don't see the avenue for growth without a bit of a shift in company approach with the lower price Tesla, in my opinion. But you see too, there's a lot of interesting charts that come from this California report, but Tesla is up. This is across all powertrains.
Mm-hmm.
Tesla is up to second in the state, behind Toyota.
Yeah, that's huge. And they're going to start trading back and forth a little bit. You'll see some months Tesla will outperform Toyota. And that's just starting to happen. If you look at the percent change in registrations. Yeah, that's not super surprising.
It's what we were just talking about, but with the F series. But
Yeah, they're having big troubles, and they're not really
they also
they're doing it to
cut their
themselves.
sedans, and sedans sell better in California than other markets.
That's true. So I mean, a lot of this is self-inflicted when it comes to Ford and GM, and we might be fans of Jim Farley. We like a lot of the stuff that he's been promoting out there, but that doesn't mean that someone can do a great job on product and have a real great vision going forward. But if you're making decisions that hurt you in the present, you're never going to get to that future where your vision is going to kick in. And you've got Chevrolet announcing a Silverado electric pickup that's not going to reach the market for 2 years. I mean, keep in mind, we saw that thing at CES in 2022, and it's still not out. So you're getting ready to buy a new Silverado. Are you going to wait? And then now they're saying, well, we're going to join NACS. Okay, well, is the first Silverado going to have that, or do I wait for the second Silverado? Like all of these news stories are creating reasons to wait. So who's going to still be alive when we get to this utopian future where everything can charge on a Tesla supercharger? I don't know, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
We'll move on. I just these are the final stats, which are just just mind blowing a bit. So 7.4% US BEV market share is sort of impressive. I mean, it's like we're actually improving, but so much of that is driven by California. So California accounts for 35% of the country's BEV sales. It's 21.5% BEV market share, and I mean, this is higher than Europe.
Yeah.
This is nearly at where China is. China was 25% BEV market share. So California and China are sort of like neck and neck, except China, I'm sure, sells a lot more plug-in vehicles because of all those BYDs that are popular, and we don't have any real popular plug-in hybrids anymore. So yeah, just speaking about Tesla is at a very high level, but how can it sustain and grow? And you seem to have noticed this, which is Tesla is trying to advertise finally.
Tesla is advertising. This is something that I brought up a couple of months ago when I said, look, we're talking about Tesla as if they don't do marketing, as if they don't do advertising. This year, Tesla paid money to go to the Electrify Expo shows in Seattle, in Miami, and have customers show up and do test drives. That was the first kind of real public evidence that they were marketing. Now, here is more. This is a screenshot that's sent to us by our mutual friend, Lauren McDonald. Lauren McDonald's a contributor for Clean Technica. He's very, very well respected analyst in the industry. And he's the one who actually caught this. He's working on a presentation, an article about EV demand faltering. And this was a response from that sort of search. And he found, sponsored Tesla starting at $36,490 federal tax credit. Now he is in California. Some of this may be geo-targeted. He's in Northern California in a nice fancy neighborhood. So that, clearly he's going to get a different ad than, guys in Tulsa, Oklahoma living in a trailer park. But there is a Tesla ad. So that is something that now Tesla is doing. We are now advertising, people.
See, the funny thing that though for me is, Elon was always very anti-advertising. Like he's like, you can improve your product better and it will sell itself. Why not do that instead of advertise? He changed course after buying Twitter and realizing his $44 billion or whatever relied on advertising. Now, I mean, there's potentially other reasons for it as well. A lot of people have been pushing for it for a long time. But in my opinion, online advertising like this, while it might be the best ROI for a lot of companies, is not particularly doing what Tesla needs, because Tesla needs to reach the segment of the market that isn't online all the time, that isn't very active on social media, Googling, on YouTube. It needs to reach older, rich people who watch TV, frankly. Like that's who it
That's
needs to
it.
reach. And
Yeah.
it needs to explain to them why it's not scary to buy a Tesla, why it's better to buy a Tesla, why it's more convenient to buy a Tesla, and that Tesla isn't just for their kids and grandkids who are on YouTube all day long. Like, I think that's who Tesla needs to reach. And I think it would do, although it might seem more expensive, I think it would more effectively reach those people with TV advertising, or at least, streaming advertising. I mean, a lot of people now have streaming for sports ESPN Plus, whatever, because there's a lot more there than on TV. I think even older people, but I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of what you want to watch. Well, anyway, let's not go down that road. But I don't know.
Yeah.
The other potential headwind Tesla's facing is not just a unionization push in the US, which gets discussed in this article by Steve Hanley, but a global unionization push that's sort of like fighting back against the sort of the constant shift towards more and more capitalistic approach to business globally. And so Sweden's got very strong unions. Interestingly, it's not even the union that's striking that's not letting Tesla import vehicles. Well, sorry, the union that's not letting Tesla import vehicles is not even the union that's on strike. They're doing it in solidarity with with the union that's on strike, IF Metal. So they're like, yeah, we'll support our union buddies in this other union by blocking your vehicles from coming into Sweden. Like, that's crazy. I mean, that's like, this is really showing how much this is becoming a global discussion, and a kind of, it's not one union, one location situation. It's a global kind of discussion that's going on, unionization versus non-union labor. So yeah, very interesting. And the UAW at the same time is like, hey, we're aiming to not just be representing the big three, but the big five in the next couple of years. Like, they're going after Tesla. That's all I have to say on this topic. What do you want to chime in with? We're gonna go back up to the top.
Yeah, I would just say this. Like, look, there's a lot of people who have real negative thoughts and real positive thoughts about unions. And I'm going to keep all of those kind of opinions in this episode to myself. I'll tell you about how the corporations are evil and everybody should unionize in a different format. But I do want to say, like, we are living in a time where we have a greater difference between average annual salary and cost of living than we've ever had in the United States. When you look at the Great Depression, housing, food, as a fraction, as a percentage of average wage, housing, shelter, transportation were more affordable during the Great Depression than they are today. Meanwhile, all of these companies, all of them, Ford, Shell, General Motors, Tesla, they keep putting out on Bloomberg and on, Investopedia and all these other different formats, and New York Times, talking about record profits, growth, streamlined efficiency, worker efficiency. And there seems to be plenty of money to go around, plenty of money at the top, plenty of money to fund the record number of billionaires that we have in this country. But, apparently not enough to pay our people enough to keep track and keep pace with the added cost of housing and everything else. So I really think that we're going to see a stronger labor push in the coming years. I hope so. And, obviously that's going to affect Tesla. It's going to affect all of the automakers who want to do business in countries that ultimately need to be able to afford their products in order to stay in business.
Yeah, I think there's a growing split in culture between the kind of the wage and sort of middle class salary class, and I would say the investor class, the people who make enough money that they're looking every month, how do they get the most ROI on their investments? How do they get the most out of their extra money that they make every month that they put into investments? And they want to see workers paid less. They want to see workers drop, the investor class. They want to see their stock price constantly go up. And I think are a bit oblivious to the fact that it is getting harder and harder for middle class people to just get by and not feel super stressed.
But do we have a middle class anymore? I mean, if you consider
what a middle class, that's why I struggled with. That's why I struggled with the term, because I was like, what should I call this wage and hourly and sort of more lower salary class, right?
But this is a serious question, because the home that I live in now, the house that I live in now, It last sold in 1985 for $85,000. The median income back then was about 42,000. So about 2 years' salary. My latest tax assessment was more than $500,000. And I do not make $1 million a year. I don't know who does. I don't know anybody who does. But the fact remains that if wages had kept pace with home value, right, I would effectively be making 250 grand a year to live in the same house. But that hasn't happened. The house, the housing prices have gone up, 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 up. We've gone from 10-year and 15-year fixed rate mortgages to 30-year and now 40 and 50-year adjustable rate. It's a mess. And I just, I look around and I look at shopping malls and I look at video, movies and people going to the mall in the 80s and things like that. And I think, wow, why was this happening? And the answer was people used to go hang out at the mall because they could afford to,
Yeah,
because you could go and buy stuff.
yeah.
I mean, you can't get out of Taco Bell anymore for under $5, under 10 if you're lucky. And this sounds crazy, but like,
No, no, it's a
I
big, and I think it's a
tough out
growing,
there.
yeah, it's a growing issue, and I think the union labor fight will be a growing part of that.
Yeah,
Oh, we skipped France for the EV sales report, but they're at 26% plug-in vehicle share,
they're
and
doing great.
full electric is full electric is right there.
What is a
16
PEV?
plug-in vehicles, and then so BEV
Ah,
full electric 16.7%. So they're below California. Not worth noting. No, no, they're doing pretty good. But this is along the same lines, and I figured this would get linked there. Transport and Environment, a European nonprofit, which does great work. They're just highlighting that the price of small cars has gone up a lot.
yeah.
And beyond inflation. So the price of small cars is going up more than inflation. It's exactly what you're talking about, which is that it just gets harder and harder for the people who are not in the market for an S-Class, but are in the market for a Mercedes A-Class or a Peugeot 208. Harder and harder for them to get a new car or get a good deal on a used one. So it's just, again, there's a kind of growing divide of
Look at the Twingo.
the
Go back
investor
up there
class
and
and the non-investor class.
look at the Twingo. A 60% price increase in 4 years. That is bonkers, kids.
And we've seen it. I saw something recently about I guess it's a popular talking point that it's Biden's fault that the gas prices are higher than they were a few years ago, and the response was like, these oil companies are making record profits. They're making record profits right now because they're just blaming their high prices on
Sure.
others and raking in the profits, and you're falling for it because you're like, oh, it's not Exxon's fault.
I don't think that's true. I think it's absolutely President Biden's fault that gas prices are high. And I'll tell you why. Because all of those people who are running those gas and oil companies are criminals. They are climate criminals. They are robbing our children of our future. They are extorting money out of people who can't afford it, and they should all be in prison. And until the Department of Justice is rounding up these oil executives and putting them in gulags, it will absolutely be their fault that those prices are so high.
I thought you were going to say, and they want Biden to be pushed out of office, so they're happy to have high gas prices until they get their pick.
Well, that's true too. But if he had any stones, he'd have them all imprisoned already.
This is one of our writers, Carolyn Fortuna and Steve Hanley. They have a neighbor who they had hyped up Teslas and EVs to them for a while, and then one day this guy shows up with a Tesla, and she's like, oh, did you buy a Tesla? He's like, oh no, I rented one from, it's a snowbird from, It wasn't Hertz this time, it was Avis. And just the same thing we've talked about before, so we don't need to go on about it. It's just, again, another story of they were told, they asked, like, what do I need to know? I was like, what do I need to do? And it's like, oh no, it's all self-explanatory. It's all on the touch screen there. And first of all, they're supposed to get a car with 70% or more charge. Once they realized they needed a charge and they found a supercharger, And Carolyn like looked at this after the fact. She's like, "Oh, you must not have left the rental place with 70% charge because you wouldn't have had the supercharge already, you know?" So it's
Right.
kind of like just, you know, and they supercharged and they didn't even realize, hey, who's paying for this? Like, am I? Are they? And it ends up they pay for it. It gets billed to Avis, and then Avis charges them. And like a couple days in or something, Caroline's like, "Oh, have you used those, the free chargers at this garage, whatever?" It's like, "What, free chargers? No, they've been using the Tesla superchargers and getting charged a pretty penny to supercharge
Right.
without even realizing it." And they didn't get any help from the rental car company. Like, "Hey, this is where you can charge for free. This is how you charge. If you use a Tesla supercharger, we're gonna charge you for that, or you're gonna pay for it. And not only are you gonna pay for it, you pay for it plus like some commission." What's the I gotta find that, because it's not even a small. They're getting a commission just for you using the supercharger that just goes straight to Avis for no clear reason,
Yeah.
Whereas,
That's brutal.
which is not, this is not helping. 2.3% administrative fee. What is there? There is no need for an administrative fee. This is just a standard auto payment that happens. No one needs to deal with that. Anyway,
Right.
let's move on before I get angry. Couple last stories. We'll wrap up this one. What do we got here? Not,
Yeah. So this is, we talk about the electrification of everything, right? We're not just talking about the electrification of passenger cars. There is a huge percentage of goods and services and ultimately
all right,
diesel
that's
and
good. We're
gas
moving on. No, I'm just kidding.
that gets burned by big trucks. So this is, Freightliner has their e-Cascadia, their EM2 medium duty vehicle. And this is now announcing that Penske, Pitt, Ohio, and a few others have put in orders for these vehicles. These are, this is good news. It means people are buying the EVs, they're putting them into the fleet. And, these fleet companies are a little bit different. They do everything by dollars and cents. They don't necessarily care about ESG goals or climate goals. They're looking at, reduced total cost of ownership. And, for them, EVs make sense where they make sense, and they're going to put them into the market and see how they do.
Yeah, good news. Which is like the most important segment to electrify, I think.
Oh, absolutely. The class 5, class 8 trucks,
Although
100%.
I say that, and also those small scooters, which are very polluting and can be electrified with much smaller batteries. So I think those are, and school buses, because kids and all that stuff. Kids are important. So
Kids, gotta
this
have
is
the kids.
this is just a reminder of why this is all matters. So world's most toxic air forced capital of India to restrict car use. Just a reminder of like the huge cost of not having zero emissions vehicles.
It's interesting. I really like this article because, I mean, obviously you don't want to hear about toxic air, but I don't know if you remember back in like 2013, 2014, Beijing's air pollution was so bad that they had billboards, LED billboards showing people blue skies. Like, hey, remember, there's a sky out there. And the government of China really looked at this and said, no, we're going to be EVs. We're going to reduce emissions. We're going to crack down here, and we're going to make this environment a place where people can live. We're going to, the thing about the environment is we all live there, right? And I look at this picture in India, and I can only hope that India is going to look at this, take this seriously, and respond in the same way China did, and really, really take a big chunk out of global carbon emissions.
Yeah, I mean, when you never see anymore like China, and maybe it's the case that Chinese cities are still some of the most polluted sometimes, but it seems like I always see it being India or somewhere in Europe.
Yeah, because I think they are legitimately doing a lot better.
And we've got the next gen electric motor from Renault and Valeo, E7A. Should we
Yeah,
punt
this
this?
is crazy. I
Okay.
haven't seen too much about this, but this is a electric motor, an efficient electric motor that doesn't use any rare earth minerals. They're using just kind of copper and stuff that you can find relatively easily, copper, nickel, things like that. And again, before anybody gets in there and goes, yeah, but how much nickel is there? It's like 40% of the planet. Like, it's fine. So, yeah, I think this is exciting stuff. I don't know enough about it to really know how this is going to move and shift markets. But I think if your big objection to EVs is that they use too many rare earth minerals that are pulled out of, conflict territories, and we can't really be 100% sure where the minerals are coming from, Renault has an answer for you. They have a motor here with no rare earths. Yeehaw!
All right, and that's the show. And we'll check in next time to run down another crazy list of stories. This seemed like one of the most all over the place lists today. Like, we had good,
we
bad,
had so much this weekend to cover. It was like, of course we're going to be all over the place. There's stuff happening everywhere.
It just seems like there's normally more of a couple of themes, and here's like there's like 10 themes, and it's like, how do we link them all? Like, it felt a little bit difficult, but at the same time, it just shows how diverse and interesting this field is right now.
Look, we're not going to win an Emmy for every one of these.
Oh my, now I'm depressed. All right, cheers.
That was good.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Scott Cooney. I started Clean Technica to promote clean energy and other sustainable alternatives, and for 13 years we've been moving markets. If we had a nickel for every time someone told us they bought their first EV, solar, e-bike, or fill in the blank clean energy solution, we'd be a cable TV channel by now. But we don't get those nickels. So unfortunately, we could use your help to reach a few more people. If just 1% of our audience chipped in a few bucks a month, we could hire dozens of great journalists and promote all sorts of climate solutions. It's easy. Just go to cleantechnica.com/support and sign up with a credit card in seconds. Cancel anytime. But we'll be sending out some cool perks too, so I think you'll want to stick around. With your support, we'll keep leading the charge. Thank you so much.